So we're walking down the main path of Finca Canteros right now, and I'm just thrilled to be able to actually show you this incredible ecosystem on this walk. Everything you're looking at now, this whole rich, diverse forest, used to be cattle pasture. There are so many different things to see at Finca Canteros, but I'm going to take you directly to one of my favorite sites on the property, a project I started when I first moved here in 2019, which is called the Children's Forest of Cotobruz. This project involved inviting 8 local schools that participated in an environmental education program that I helped develop with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology called Bird Sleuth. Those participants came to Finca Canteros to plant their own unique section of this cattle pasture. And that was only 3 years ago. And now you can see how much this forest has grown in such a short span of time. There's already no more cattle pasture grass growing in that slope because once that shade comes over, it eliminates the cattle pasture. The cattle pasture that you were seeing here simply cannot grow under that shade. My name is Lily Briggs, and I'm the founder and director of Finca Canteros Environmental Association, which is a Canadian, Costa Rican nonprofit organization dedicated to environmental education, forest restoration, and research. And we are physically based here in San Vito, in the county of Cotobruz, in the far south of Costa Rica. And we are legally established as well in British Columbia, Canada, where I'm from. So if you're wondering what brought me, a Canadian, to this remote corner of Costa Rica, let me try to sum it up in as small a nutshell as possible. When I was doing my Master's of Environmental Studies back in Canada, I learned about a program called Bird Sleuth of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which was aimed at teaching kids how to appreciate birds and help contribute to the protection and creation of bird habitat, and to engage in citizen science projects related to birds. And at that moment, I was looking for a project focus of my master's. And given my interests in environmental education, in birds, and in Latin America, I thought, this is a really wonderful opportunity to see if their curriculum is available for audiences in Latin America, because the protection of birds depends not only on protecting their habitat in North America, which is only their breeding grounds where they spend less time of the year, but in protecting their non-breeding grounds here in Central America and South America. So I contacted the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and found out that no, the curriculum was only available at that time for audiences in North America. So I offered to help adapt and field test the curriculum outside of North America for the first time, which is what brought me to Costa Rica back in 2009 to do a field test of the Bird Sleuth curriculum in Spanish with Costa Rican students. And from there, things really started to take off, and I won't go into all the details of that part of the story, but eventually, given my involvement in developing this curriculum, I ended up attending Cornell University for my PhD. And during my PhD in the Department of Natural Resources at Cornell, I had sort of 2 tracks. One was pursuing my PhD in environmental education, and the other was continuing to build the Bird Sleuth program in collaboration with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology for Latin American audiences. And these 2 tracks were separate but also sort of informed and overlapped with one another. And one of the places I ended up as part of that work with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology was here in San Vito, where I first taught a workshop back in 2012 at the invitation of the San Vito Bird Club. And I fell in love with this spot from the very start. In fact, I fell in love with Costa Rica from the very first time I visited. But I always was looking for excuses to come back to Costa Rica, to continue working here. The country is absolutely beautiful, the people are wonderful, and I love the Spanish language, and I love all the birds that I get to see. So it was really a country that just really spoke to my heart and pulled me back time and time again. And so when I was doing my postdoc I did my postdoc at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology as well, and I was doing research on the impacts of the Bird Sleuth curriculum. And one of my research sites was here in San Vito. So again, I had an excuse to keep coming back here, working with local partners. And it was around that time that a dream I had had for a long time started to take shape, which was to actually move and base myself permanently in Central America. At the time, I wasn't sure if it would be Nicaragua or Costa Rica. And so I started looking at potential properties. And on one of my visits here to San Vito, actually a work trip where I was facilitating a workshop between the bird sleuth teachers here in Costa Rica and the bird sleuth teachers that I worked with in Guatemala, I had the opportunity to come visit Finca Cántaros, thanks to a serendipitous meeting of the previous owner, Gail. And when we came here, I heard as we were walking in that they had been trying to sell the property for many years, but weren't having much luck because they really wanted to make sure that whoever bought this property wasn't just going to come in and cut down all the trees, put in a parking lot, as they say. And so they were looking for a very unique buyer. And it really was a match made in heaven because I was looking for exactly this kind of space to facilitate environmental education programs and to do my own forest restoration projects. So when Gail Hull told me all about the work she did here over nearly 30 years, restoring the land, and then we had the opportunity to purchase the adjacent land, which was cattle pasture at the time, it was just, like I said, the most perfect confluence of what I was looking for in life and what Gail was looking for as well. So my family and I purchased Finca Cántaros in 2019, as well as the adjacent property. And the following year was actually when COVID hit. We all know 2020, no one can hear that year without thinking COVID, pandemic. And at that time, I was still working remotely for the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. But as for a lot of people, COVID gave me a chance to stop, pause, reflect, what was it I was looking to do in life. And as much as I loved working with the lab, I realized the time had come to start phase 2 of my long-term dream, which was starting my own environmental education organization. So in the midst of the pandemic and everything, we launched Finca Cántaros Environmental Association and have been building and evolving our various environmental education programs ever since. We're a small but dedicated team, and it's only been a very short time, but we've really managed to engage many community members in a variety of different projects. So for example, we have the Women Committed to the Earth program, which is our longest standing environmental education program that we started in September of 2020. And as the name suggests, that program is dedicated specifically to women. In fact, we started the program with the idea we would just focus on young women, so adolescents really, from age 13 to 18. But over time, we heard from more members of the community that they too would like to participate. And because we want to be an organization that really listens to what the community needs and what the community wants, we decided we would open up the space to women of all ages. So it went from Jóvenes Comprometidas con la Tierra, or young women committed to the earth, it transformed into women committed to the earth. And I think that's one really important example of how Finca Cántaros has tried to be adaptive and responsive to the needs of the community. Because something that is our main focus through our environmental education programs is community engagement. So I can hear voices, and it's either people visiting the finca or participants in the program that's running today. And it looks like it's women in the program. Buenos días, ¿cómo están? ¿Es la primera vez en Finca Cántaros?
Sí, es la primera vez, pero está muy bonito.
Me alegra mucho oírlo.
Sí.
Qué bonito que pudieran venir a disfrutar.
Sí, está muy, muy hermosa la laguna.
Qué bueno. ¿Ustedes son de San Vito?
Sí.
Sí, así es, de acá al centro.
Qué bueno.
Qué bonito, es muy relajante.
Y están aquí para participar en el programa de Mujeres Comprometidas, ¿verdad?
Sí, llevo tiempo invitándolas y ya hoy se logró.
Qué
Para
dicha.
que podamos hablar con doctoras y personas especializadas que hablan de temas súper bonitos.
Qué bueno. ¿Cuánto tiempo lleva usted participando en el programa?
Como 6 meses.
6 meses, qué
Como
dicha.
6 meses, sí. Cada
Excelente.
vez que puedo vengo.
Gracias por venir y ojalá sea una sesión bastante interesante. Y, no,
Espero que les guste y que me sigan acompañando.
perfecto. So our Women Committed to the Earth program has gone through different phases. We really tried to initiate that program in such a way that left it open for collaboration and co-creation with women in the community. And so we tried a lot of different types of activities, including restoration and agroecology activities on site. We did nature and art programs. We did a whole variety of things. But it became clear that the main interests of the participants were being together and working on a project together outside, learning about nature, contributing to the protection of nature. And so over time, some of our focal areas became these agroecology projects, which involved creating organic compost that we could then use in our restoration projects. And then another project that emerged was a mural project, which involved asking the women, what does this program mean to you and what does the environment mean to you? And that space became a really important way to connect with nature through different avenues. So by researching and learning about the species that the women wanted to paint, they were able to focus in and take time and space to really understand that species. So this mural responds to the two questions that we posed the group of women committed to the earth. What does the environment mean to you, and what does being in this program mean to you? So you can see on this mural an array of paintings of the species that most grab the women's attention, species that are very important in this local ecosystem. And you can also see images painted of the women gathering around food, because that is considered a very important component of the program, that women have a chance to share and connect during the snack time of the program. And I think that speaks to one of the important objectives of environmental education, which is about social connection in addition to learning and gaining new skills. We also have the emblem species of Finca Cantharos painted on the mural, which is the chestnut-sided warbler, which is also on our logo. And that's because the chestnut-sided warbler is a migratory species that breeds up in Canada and in the United States and then comes down to Costa Rica for the winter. And because Finca Cantharos is a Canadian Costa Rican environmental organization, this wonderful bird connects us through the migration that it does twice a year. It also became an important space to create self-efficacy and bolster empowerment, because for many women, they had never painted before and they weren't sure if they could do it, and they had a narrative that, well, I don't know how to do that, so I can't be involved. And part of the program is creating a space for women to support one another and kind of overcome those mental obstacles around, no, I can't do that. So the painting was actually a process that allowed many women to see themselves differently as, I can't do this, I'm not a painter, to, you know what, I can learn how to do this and I can collaborate with my peers, and together, we can create this incredible mural. Another evolution of the Women Committed to the Earth program, based on all of our evaluations and informal feedback and focus groups, was learning that many women wanted a course that went deeper into subjects like biodiversity or sustainability. Because the Women Committed to the Earth program, like I said, was designed to be more of an informal space, but some really wanted more of a formal course that allowed them to dig in deeper to skills and how could those skills related to conservation also give them more job opportunities in this community, because there are very limited job opportunities in conservation, and especially for many women in this community. So from there, myself and our environmental education coordinator, Carla Azofefa, started developing a more in-depth program that required attendance throughout the entire program. And we came up with a concept called Lideresas por la Naturaleza, or women leaders for nature. And we just ran the pilot of this program in August over 4 weeks, 4 Saturdays of intensive 8-hour courses with guest speakers and a focus on biodiversity and training around how can those participants do an action project that benefits their environment and their community. And based on everything we learned in that pilot program, we are now compiling the evaluations, analyzing them, and figuring out how we want to launch a bigger program in the new year, thinking about the fact that to build a lot of the skills to be a leader for nature, we need more time and space to cultivate public speaking skills, or to cultivate research skills, or to even, like I said, build more confidence and self-efficacy. And we looked a lot in the program, not just at the learning of the process of gaining specific knowledge about the environment, but going on internal journeys to look at what are some of the potential internal obstacles that might prevent women from pursuing their goals, pursuing their dreams. Because I think women still receive a lot of messaging that they are not as capable, perhaps, as men to carry out this kind of work. And so we're really trying to help create a space to change that narrative and to bolster empowerment and to build those sort of internal skills in combination with the perhaps external skills and knowledge around biodiversity and what is involved in carrying out an action project and creating a forest restoration project and things like that. In addition to our Women Committed to the Earth program, we also have another weekly program called Night Walks or Caminatas Nocturnas. And this program is open to anyone in the community, all ages, all genders, to come and enjoy a walk through Finca Cántaros on Friday nights to explore the nocturnal diversity of the finca. And this space is designed to really let nature lead in the sense that we don't have a curriculum per se, but the facilitator of the program, our staff member Randall Jimenez, who is the community outreach coordinator, he will walk the participants through the finca, and if they hear, for example, an owl, they will go look for the owl and talk about nocturnal species of birds. Or if they come upon many different species of frogs, they'll pause and look at those species and compare their characteristics. It's really about letting nature decide what it wants to show of itself that particular night. And another really interesting outcome of this curriculum, based again on the feedback and evaluation and informal conversations we've had, is that it's a space to change perspectives and around nature in the sense that many people have ideas about bats or snakes or frogs being, creepy or spooky or gross or whatever adjective you want to choose. And something that has been really wonderful about these night walks is it's given people a chance to see a snake from a different angle, or see a bat from a different angle, or see a frog from a different angle. And instead of just automatically reacting like, ew, gross, creepy, scary, it's an opportunity to focus on the importance of these species for the ecosystem, and also a way to shed light on the fact that if you look at a snake with the different set of eyes, you might actually see that it's very beautiful rather than just creepy. Likewise, we try to help participants discover ways they might have been hearing and internalizing myths about different species, like the fact that, bats are supposedly, going to make a nest in your hair, and people in the Night Walk program will learn, no, in fact, bats are attracted to our heads because of the insects that are attracted to us, and bats are eating the insects. So just being able to help debunk some of these myths around these species and shed a different light on them that inspires both appreciation, interest, and hopefully, eventually, positive conservation action. Nature can have healing powers, and environmental education should take advantage of the healing power of nature to create spaces that are not just educational, but allow for mental and emotional growth and healing as well. And that's really one of the goals of our People and the Planet program, which is a program we run in collaboration with a local center called Comunidad Encuentro, which helps young boys and men recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. So our staff member, Randall Jimenez, actually goes to this center to teach a 3-week course about how we can all engage in hands-on environmental action projects, focusing on the type of the different species that Comunidad Encuentro has in its local forest, focusing on how we can engage in citizen science projects, and we can also participate in hands-on stewardship projects such as our forest restoration work. Last summer, we ran People on the Planet just around the time we had acquired some new properties, which were cattle pasture, and we were able to involve the participants in Gente y Naturaleza, which are young men and boys recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. We were able to bring them to our properties to help plant trees and learn about why it's important to not just focus on the tree planting itself, but how they will be invited to stay involved in the growth of the forest and in stewarding this forest over time. So that's really part of our community engagement philosophy. We hope to not only engage participants for a one-off event or even a an event of a few weeks, we really want to try to ensure we have continuous contact and continuous engagement with these participants over the years to come, especially in our forest restoration projects, where there's an opportunity for them to come back many times, help compost, help weed, and help do these stewardship activities that highlight the importance of not just planting the tree, but actually engaging in follow-up and helping that forest really grow and thrive and prosper. When Gail Hull bought this property in 1994, she started working on restoring it back from cattle pasture. And my mission is to not just continue her legacy, but also to hopefully add to it by involving more community members in helping to restore this land. And we are in the process of acquiring more land as part of Finca Cántaros Environmental Association's reach, where we can help convert cattle pasture back into forest in collaboration with many community partners such as OSA Conservation and the San Vito Bird Club and the Las Cruces Biological Station. And we believe that this community engagement piece is really important to the work we do, because my goal is to make everyone in San Vito and beyond feel like Cántaros is their backyard, that this isn't just private property, but that we're all working together to protect these sacred spaces like the lagoon, which has all that social and archaeological significance. How about I take you on a short tour of San Vito, where Finca Cántaros Environmental Association is based. You can see we are surrounded by beautiful mountains. The ecosystem that we are based in is called a pre-montane wet forest. We get a lot of rain in this area, and we're up at about 1,000 meters above sea level. And Finca Cántaros is located fairly close to the center of San Vito, which is in the county of Cotobruz. There are a lot of agricultural fields in San Vito, as well as cattle pasture and coffee plantations. And we are currently coming down the hill into the main part of San Vito. And this is the downtown San Vito. As part of the work in biological corridors, it's important to respect the fact that planting trees is obviously important in bringing back forests, but we also need spaces to grow food for people. We can't forget people in the equation. We work closely with an organization called OSA Conservation that helps landowners use their land more efficiently to either grow crops or to raise cattle, so that there is space also for growing trees. But there's always going to be that tension between needing space for forests and needing space for people to live and grow their crops and everything else humans need to survive. 2021 was the start of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And forest restoration is one of the three main pillars of Finca Cántaros Environmental Association's work. And we actually launched our first forest restoration project before the launch of the UN Decade. And this was in 2019 with the launch of the Children's Forest of Cotobruz project. This collaborative community-based project brought together kids from 8 different schools in the community who were participating in an environmental education program focused on birds. And the goal of bringing the students here to get their hands in the dirt and to actually feel like they were contributing to a forest that would become their forest or would be their forest was to showcase how working together through hands-on action, we can make a difference, and especially in a short amount of time. These trees were only just planted in 2019, and the amount of growth in 3 short years is truly mind-boggling, especially for someone from Canada, where the tree growing season is much shorter than here in the tropics, where it is year-round. I think this project is really important as a showcase of how we have forest restoration as one of our pillars, but it is combined with environmental education goals and objectives. And we did have the goal of bringing these students back year after year to accompany the growth of their forests. But it does get harder as the kids get older and, when they're adolescents, different interests attract their attention. But we are going to launch Children's Forest 2.0 next year and start with a younger cohort of students that we can accompany throughout not just elementary school, but hopefully find ways to keep them engaged throughout their high school years as well. And we're really lucky because people ask, well, where do you get these trees from? And we have a partnership with a local organization called OSA Conservation that has a tree nursery on site here at Finca Cántaros. And thanks to this collaboration, we are able to access native species of trees that we can plant in our forest restoration projects. Because this was actually a big challenge in many parts of Costa Rica. People want to plant trees, but often the trees that they're given or that they can access are not native to that particular area, so they're not well suited to the environment where people are trying to grow them. But thanks to our partnerships, we have access to appropriate native species of trees that are resilient and adapted to this particular environment here at about 1,100 meters above sea level in the south of Costa Rica. And all these native species are primarily fast-growing species so that they will help shade out the invasive pasture grasses. They're attractive to birds and bats, which means that when the birds and bats start dispersing their seeds, the forest starts doing the work itself and there's less human intervention needed. And there are also many species of nitrogen fixers, so that helps replenish and renew or restore the soil, which is obviously very important in forest restoration efforts. Along with the children who were invited to collaborate on the Children's Forest of Cotobruz, we also involved university volunteers from other countries, including the US and Europe. And one of the groups of students was here in 2019 when we first planted, and then due to COVID, they weren't able to come back until 2022. And it was their first time seeing this forest after 3 years. And the reaction to the growth of, especially the Inga trees on the sloping part of the Children's Forest, was truly amazement. I mean, I wish I had captured on camera in that moment, because this friend and collaborator on the Children's Forest, he said that he remembers planting those trees back in 2019, and it was a really hot day, and we're out in this pasture, and these poor small trees, and he was thinking, Godspeed, I hope they make it. And he said coming back 3 years later and seeing the trees actually, not only bigger, but truly thriving, was such a sign of resilience and hope. And he was just blown away by how successful the Children's Forest project had turned out. And one thing we talked about was the fact that part of our philosophy, just like with environmental education needing to be a continuous, ongoing engagement, with tree growing, it is also about the ongoing commitment and engagement and stewardship. And so I have been very committed to making sure that those trees were not neglected, that there was ongoing maintenance to make sure that the grasses didn't grow over the young trees, and that we were, fertilizing the soil with organic compost when possible. And I think those factors really help contribute to the success of this project. And we're looking forward to seeing how the projects we launched this year also move forward, because we're dedicating the same care and time and energy. And in fact, one of our other staff members, David Rodriguez, who is the research coordinator for Finca Cántaros, he is leading the logistics around a project with forest restoration on one of the new properties we acquired this year. And we were lucky to get involved in a collaboration with a university in Switzerland called ETH Zurich, and a lab of students, or a lab of scientists called the Cruther Lab, who is working with Google, and they have a project called Restore, which is an online platform to connect forest restoration practitioners around the world. And so those scientists have started these really exciting and important research projects looking at functional diversity and assisted versus natural regeneration. And these projects are intended to contribute to our body of knowledge about what are the most effective ways to restore lands, especially here in the tropics, without automatically assuming that tree planting or tree growing is the best and most strategic and most cost-effective solution. But what are some other approaches to restoring degraded lands that we can use, given that it's critical at this moment in history that we're restoring lands to address climate change and rapid deforestation. And so Cántaros is really excited to be collaborating with these great minds and contributing our recently acquired lands to the cause of research as well as on-the-ground forest restoration. I'm here with David Rodriguez, who is the resident biologist at Finca Cántaros Environmental Association. What do you do for Finca Cántaros, David?
Hi, I'm the coordinator of the research projects here in Finca Cántaros.
What advice would you give to environmental educators around the world based on your experiences in environmental education?
Well, besides books and workshops and being in rooms, it is very important to be outside in the forest where you can feel plants, where you can hear birds, and all those things will give you a much better idea of what is nature and how you can talk with people about how to preserve what we have.
Thank you. That's lovely. And what is one of your favorite activities that you lead or do here at Finca Cántaros?
The activities that I like the most is when we go out and when we are into the trails looking for any kind of animals. Could be a frog, could be a lizard or birds. But the most important thing is to connect those people that are with me at the moment with nature.
Costa Rica is world famous for its environmental initiatives and for being really ahead of the curve in terms of environmental sustainability. In fact, it's gained a reputation as the Green Republic, and with very good reason. Costa Rica, like I said, has been ahead of the curve in terms of protecting forests and creating a very robust national system of conservation areas, and it really has put itself on the global stage as a premier ecotourism destination where people can come and enjoy the immense biodiversity it has here. Despite Costa Rica's small size, I believe it hosts almost 5% of the world's biodiversity. On the other hand, Costa Rica is, as they say, it's not ecotopia. It has its challenges, and there is a dark side contrasting with its global image as a green republic. It's one of the highest users of pesticides in crops such as pineapples, and there is still a fair amount of deforestation that goes on in the country. So what we're doing with Finca Cántaros is trying to contribute to restoration efforts, and Cántaros is just one of many beautiful, positive, inspiring stories around this country. And as someone who came in from the outside, I never want to make it sound like, here come the Canadians to rescue the Costa Ricans. That is not what we are saying or promoting at all, because really the Costa Ricans are doing so much incredible, inspiring work to protect this rich biodiversity that they have. What I think is really important about the work we're doing is that we are collaborating completely with Costa Ricans, and my entire staff is Costa Rican, and we are working with local stakeholders, especially those involved in the Amistosa Biological Corridor Initiative, to support and enhance and complement and augment, all the great adjectives that you want to use, all the efforts that people are already developing to create connectivity between forests, and to not just focus on the ecological dimension in terms of restoring forests, but to also work with communities and think about what communities want and take into account the fact that people also need space to live and grow their crops. So I think it's important to highlight that what we're doing is one piece of a much bigger, important puzzle. And especially given that our expertise is environmental education, when it comes to the forest restoration component, we aren't the experts in that. So we're lucky that we get to collaborate with the experts in order to do the forest restoration as effectively as possible. If I were to try to do this on my own, I wouldn't know which species to select. I wouldn't know, the right time of year to plant. I wouldn't know a lot of the technical ecological aspects. But I believe my expertise and the expertise of my staff is the environmental education component. So we have had a lot of success bringing the community together and using those opportunities as teachable moments. How can we, not only learn what species are appropriate and adapted to this environment, but how can we also learn why it's important to have social capital? Why do we need to trust the members of our community to work together? Why is it important to focus on tree growing over time and not just the one act of tree planting? As much as everyone loves a beautiful picture of people happy planting trees, we also want to think about what is that forest going to look like in a year, and how do we need to be attentive and prepared and strategic in terms of protecting that forest and engaging the community over time, because one of the biggest challenges with forest restoration around the world, and one of the many reasons that often restoration efforts tend to fail, unfortunately, is because well, first of all, there's not enough focus on the tree growing, but too much on just the tree planting. And there's also not necessarily enough focus on how are we going to really get the community engaged and invested in these efforts, so that in 20 years, there's not deforestation all over again because the community thinks, well, who cares? We're not interested in that forest. But if we involve the community from the start, and the community remembers, you know what, it was my son or my daughter who came and planted those trees, you know, I have more investment in not wanting to cut that forest down. Or if it's a forest that that person now appreciates because they get to come and go birding or go looking for frogs, and maybe they got inspired to become interested in those species because of some environmental education activities and programs at Finca Cántaros, that also creates more buy-in and long-term sustainability. So again, we're trying to complement all these other amazing efforts in the region and in the country at large through our environmental education initiatives to start with, you know, fostering a genuine love and appreciation for nature and all the species that it has, and providing hands-on experiences of positive action, and through those experiences, hopefully generating both the investment, the personal investment of the community, and hope, and this idea that working together we can be stronger, and working together we can create this positive change over time. For example, we have a collaboration with the organization Birds Canada to engage in their MODIS Wildlife Tracking System project, which is a citizen science or community science project that exists at a global level, which involves researchers, practitioners, educators that want to get involved setting up what's called a MODIS station on their sites to help track movements of birds, bats, and insects. So Finca Cántaros has a MODIS station, and it was only the second MODIS station to be established here in Costa Rica. And this station allows us to detect primarily birds that are migrating through during spring or fall migration. And the MODIS station is able to detect these birds if they have what's called a radio tag placed on their back by a researcher. And so this project is a beautiful example of bringing together all of our pillars because, first of all, with respect to research, MODIS data contributes on a global level to our understanding of movement ecology, migration patterns, etc., primarily around birds, but there's opportunities to do more research around insects and bats as well. And we're tying it, for example, with environmental education. Just this past weekend, we organized a pilot program called A Morning of MODIS, where we engaged community members in a morning of activities focused on learning how does MODIS work, why is it important, what is it going to do to help protect bird habitat, and other questions along those lines. And then that also links to forest restoration in the sense that our many forest restoration projects are going to be creating bird habitat and protecting bird habitat over the long term. So that's sort of how I see the connectivity between our three main pillars of work at Finca Cántaros. Thanks to my doctorate studies at Cornell, I've been able to bring the academic lens to the practitioner work that I'm trying to do with Finca Cántaros Environmental Association. And one of the books that really helps guide me is a book called Advancing Environmental Education Practice by my former PhD co-advisor, Dr. Marianne Krasny, a global expert in environmental education. And one of the chapters that really helped me conceptualize the way we run environmental education programs at Finca Cántaros focuses on self-efficacy. And this chapter describes how self-efficacy can be bolstered in environmental education participants through 4 prongs. There's the mastery experiences, there's the vicarious experiences, there's the social interactions, as well as the social care for participants. I'm paraphrasing, and I might not be repeating it exactly right, but that's the general idea. And so the mastery and vicarious experiences really give participants an opportunity to, first of all, experience hands-on how to engage in, for example, an environmental action project, whether that be planting trees or growing trees or any number of projects that we're trying to do through our programs here. as well as through vicarious experiences, learning from or seeing mentors or role models carrying out these projects with success. And I believe that through our programs, we really try to bring in examples. In the women's program, for example, in the Women Leaders for Nature, we brought in a variety of guest speakers, all women, all successful professionals working in conservation, to showcase their experiences and journeys and lessons learned, and how they can inspire other women to pursue similar paths. And then in terms of the social interaction and the care for participants, we really focus on creating spaces where the participants get to engage with one another, get to become friends, get to support and collaborate with one another, because that's been shown in environmental education research to be a very important component of successful environmental education outcomes over the long term. And then finally, there's the element of care for participants. You know, it's not just about bringing participants in and saying, okay, now we're going to teach you all these names of birds and all these names of trees, and you better know all of them by the time you leave the finca, otherwise you never get to come back. It's more about building long-term relationships and establishing Cántaros as a place where we get to know one another, and we get to, take on this journey together, and really think about the participants as people, and not just, okay, we want to bring them in, teach them this, and send them on their way. No, it's about building those long-term relationships and hopefully engaging them in multiple areas of our work, not because, we need more hands to help plant trees, but we want more of that participation and engagement over the long term. During my PhD at Cornell, I was lucky to work with my co-advisor, Dr. Rich Stedman, who's a global expert in a body of literature called Sense of Place, which looks at the ways that place attachment and place meanings can influence our motivations to be stewards of our place, in particular our environment, but also our community. So I also bring that academic lens to bear on the work we do at Finca Cántaros Environmental Association. And while our projects are still very nascent and we haven't started to formally collect data around how our environmental education programs might be influencing place meanings and place attachment, that is something I'm very interested in incorporating into our work going forward, looking at long-term research projects that we could initiate as part of our environmental education programs on how we are helping participants connect to their place, and how those connections will in turn motivate positive environmental action.
Lily, do you keep in touch with Cornell's Lab of Ornithology?
Yes, I do keep in touch with colleagues from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I've recently been corresponding with Jen Fee. We co-developed the Bird Sleuth International curriculum, and we're strategizing ways we can continue that partnership, because in 2023, Finca Cántaros is going to start coordinating the logistics of implementing Bird Sleuth International again in the community with the local schools.
So you helped to adapt the Bird Sleuth curriculum to other countries. Why you couldn't just transplant the curriculum from the US elsewhere?
That's an excellent question. The motivation for adapting and translating the Bird Sleuth curriculum for countries outside of North America was mainly because when thinking about migratory birds, those species occupy habitat in both North America and Central and South America. In fact, often in North America, we refer to migratory birds as our birds, but in fact, they only spend 4 months of the year breeding up north, and then they spend up to 8 months down here in countries like Costa Rica. In order to successfully protect their habitat, we need efforts on all sides. We need those restoration efforts, those conservation efforts, those environmental education efforts, not just in North America, but in Central and South America as well. So we decided it would be wonderful to bring the curriculum to Central and South America and adapt it as best as possible for the local context. Although we deliberately left the curriculum generic in the sense that we didn't adapt it specifically to Costa Rica or Guatemala or Belize or Colombia. There are colleagues at the lab in the Celebrate Urban Birds program creating more co-created, locally adapted curricula that address the species in a specific area. The Bird Sleuth model was designed to be kind of a template that people in different countries could take and adapt as they saw fit.
What about the students' interest in observing birds?
Of course, I can't speak for all the students. Of course, there are students that weren't interested in birds. And in fact, I helped develop a survey to evaluate the attitudes toward birds as a result of participating in the Bird Sleuth curriculum. And some students, their interest in birds didn't change over the course of participating. However, many students really did enjoy getting the opportunity to not only focus in on birds, but to, for example, use binoculars and see birds through a different perspective. Obviously, seeing birds through binoculars allows you to focus in on details and their colors and more characteristics that are more difficult to see from a distance or when they're moving. One of the students I remember in the very first field test I did in Costa Rica back in 2009, actually it was one of the teachers involved in the field test, said, even though these kids see these birds every day and they're very common, it was the act of formalizing the process of going outside to see birds and actually creating, sort of a momentous occasion around it. I think just drawing kids' attention to something with an adult role model can sometimes give them a whole new perspective on it. It's like, well, if nobody else is paying attention to that bird, why would I be interested? But when it's an activity and the teacher says, let's go out and look at birds because this is really cool, then suddenly it's like it takes on a different flavor, let's say. And I think it's really interesting from an environmental education perspective. I like to say that birds serve as a really beautiful window into the natural world because they're present in almost every habitat on Earth, whether that's super urban environment in New York City, working with kids at Rocking the Boat, we could go out and see birds right in the middle of the Bronx. And here in Costa Rica, of course, in this rural area, there are just hundreds of wonderful birds to enjoy. So they provide a really special window into the natural world in a way that sometimes can be more challenging with, say, mammals or insects or other species, because they're not as present and common. But even as we sit here doing this interview, I'm listening to over 15 different species of birds. It's quite distracting, actually. So it really helps kids focus in on nature and see nature through a different lens.
Oh, I'm so glad to be distracted by birds.
Exactly. The best kind of distraction to have.
How do local people respond to the changes of the goal of this property? With the previous owner, it was more tourism oriented, and now it's about science, restoration, and environmental education.
Mm-hmm. I think overall the response has been very positive. There have been some negative comments with respect to the fact that we have not maintained the property in a more sort of curated, manicured way with as many gardens as it was when it was more of a tourist destination. And that was a deliberate choice on my part to not invest as many resources into maintaining, the beautiful gardens that Gail had. And I decided that I wanted to invest those resources into our environmental education programs. And, not that it's a huge amount of money to keep certain areas mowed, but when you're also managing forest restoration projects that require a lot of mowing to keep the new young trees protected from the overwhelming pasture grasses, I decided I would rather let certain areas of Finca Cántaros sort of return to the wild rather than keep them mowed. And so some visitors who came here expecting much more of a manicured space commented, oh, this looks a bit, abandoned, let's say. And so I had to explain to people, well, actually that's because our priorities are different now, not to downplay or degrade the wonderful priorities that Gail had, but now that it's not a tourist destination, we really want to be using the resources to meet our main mandate, which is environmental education. And I think the majority of the community has responded very positively to the fact that we are offering so many free environmental education activities for the community. Overall, the community has said, we really feel welcome to come and enjoy this space, and it's so fantastic that you are connecting with the community and engaging the community on so many fronts through our different environmental education programs.
What significant life experiences in your life as a child and then as an adult influenced what you do now?
I love that question because it gives me an opportunity to thank my wonderful parents who really set me on this life course. I like to say I have the best combination in both parents because my dad is the nature lover. He was the one that started taking me out birding when I was very young and opening my eyes to the magical world of birds. And we would go off on trips together to see fantastic wildlife, not just in my country, in Canada, but in other countries. We went on safari together. We went to the Maldives together to snorkel. So I was very, very fortunate to do these incredible, to have these incredible experiences with my dad, whether that was putting out birdseed in front of our house in Gatineau, Quebec, when I was a little kid and watching the birds come to the feeder, or see wild game on safari in Africa. And so from him, I was really inspired to love nature and appreciate nature. And from my mom, I got the logistical support, I like to say. She was the one always helping me strategize how I could organize activities at school to inspire others to not just appreciate nature, but also think about how they could also help nature. And so, for example, my mom, I remember we lived in China when I was 8 because my dad was a diplomat and we were working for the Canadian embassy there. And my mom helped me organize a brownie group to do environmental activities in the school. So we went around testing which toilets were leaking and wasting water, and so how could we address that problem in the school. So that's just one of many examples, but my mom was the one who bought me all these books like 50 Ways Kids Can Help Save the Planet, or, you know, yeah, just all these books to help me not just love nature, but channel that love into positive action. So between the two, you know, I really had always that incredible support. And flash forward 30 years later, and Finca Canteros Environmental Association is still a family effort. I would not be able to do this without the support of my parents, and my brother actually too, it's important to say, because my mother is the communications advisor for Finca Canteros, and my dad and my brother are the financial advisors, and my dad, having had management experience for how many years, many years, is always advising me on how to manage people, which is a huge challenge in any project that someone wants to do. So I've really had this incredible blend of skills and passion on the sides of both parents that has helped me cultivate my own skills and passion, and not just the interest to go out and enjoy nature, but the energy and the capacity to do something with respect to helping protect our planet.
It feels like you make a lot of impact on lives of people who come to work at Finca Canteros. I wonder what they teach you, what you learned from them.
I have learned so many things from the wonderful staff that I'm lucky to work with here at Finca Canteros, including, as you mentioned, seeing in real time that people don't necessarily need to be interested in conservation from a young age like I was. My life path aligns with the environmental education literature, significant life experiences. You know, I had the positive experiences in nature, I had the positive role models, I had all the support and infrastructure to help me build the skills to go into conservation. But I have, as you mentioned, staff members who have just recently gotten interested in nature. They were involved in, you know, they started by getting involved in the local birding groups and going out birding with them, and one thing led to another. And so they have shown me that it's never too late in life to get interested in nature and become passionate about nature, and to build skills around, you know, build skills in the conservation arena. The fact is, you're never too old. You could be 95 and decide, today is the day I want to start going and looking at birds or looking at frogs and do something for the planet, and it would never be too late.
3 words that describe Lily Briggs.
Oh, wow. That's a challenging question. I think I'm very passionate about what I do and what I'm interested in, including the environment and birds and conservation, of course, and environmental education. I think I have a lot of energy. I'm very energetic. Less energetic on the days that I haven't been able to sleep because my baby has kept me up, but that's part of motherhood, especially early motherhood. And I think I'm very determined. I think there's been different moments in my life where I thought, I'm not going to be able to accomplish this or finish this, or this is too hard. And I sort of wallow in that feeling for a minute, and then I think, hell no. I'm determined to finish this, or I'm determined to figure this out, or I'm determined to do this. And sometimes that means letting go of doing whatever it is perfectly. Perfectly doesn't exist anyways, but I think sometimes I can get in my own way about, oh, I have to try to do this specific thing perfectly. But luckily my determination to just do the thing overcomes the desire to do it perfectly and then not do it, because you can just get too paralyzed by this idea of it has to be perfect.
Can you provide an example of a challenging moment in your career and your work?
Absolutely. Well, we went to Cornell together. We did our PhD in the same department, and there was a moment in my PhD when I hit a really, really dark place personally. I was going through a divorce, and I really just wanted to get out of Ithaca, and I really just didn't want to be focused on my PhD anymore. And I thought, I can't do this, I don't have the strength. And then that determined voice in me came in and said, again, hell no, you're going to finish this come hell or high water. And so that was a really good moment for me to recognize that just sometimes you just got to power through. And now with Finca Canteros Environmental Association, there's definitely been a lot of ups and downs. I'm so happy I'm doing this, and I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. But I'm new to the world of, you know, running an organization and running it in a context, a cultural context that is not my own, in a language that's not my first language. And so there's many days when I mess up, or I misunderstand something, or something goes awry, or people aren't getting along, and I'm trying to negotiate those spaces and manage everything and try to make it all work perfectly. And there's times when I think, I don't think I can do this, I don't have the skills, I don't have the capacity. And sometimes it's a matter of, okay, letting it go to bed, wake up the next day, start again, and determined to make this happen, whatever path that looks like. So I think that's those are the two main examples from my career and academic life that have shown me that I'm just going to keep going, determined to make this work, or determined to make this happen. Why are any of us making any effort around conservation at all, given that it seems like the world is, you know, going to hell in a handbasket? I mean, you hear about the impacts of climate change every day. You experience the impacts of climate change every day. You see deforestation. You read about species loss. You read about all these horrible things, and you think about the kind of future we're going to have and what the kind of future our kids and grandchildren are going to have. It's not just about staying positive, but it's about the internal work to stay committed to this cause. Then I don't think any of us would continue doing what we're doing. It's questions about what's your self-talk? What is your internal work that keeps you going in this? And so I think maybe another question I would ask myself is, how do you frame your approach to your work in conservation? And something that I learned through this coaching program that I do was focus on commitment rather than hope. Because hope is very important, of course, and I think it is important to have hope. But there's days that we're going to wake up and we're not going to feel hopeful. Let's just be honest about that. We're not going to wake up thinking, we can turn this around, we're going to make the planet better. But we have to stay committed. And commitment is an emotion we can generate actively with our thoughts, whereas hope is a bit fleeting. Some days it's going to, you know, organically emerge. Some days it's going to be harder to conjure. But I think what I've proven to myself over the course of my life, since I was that little girl, you know, going around checking if toilets were leaking in my elementary school in Beijing, China with my mom, I've demonstrated to myself my commitment. And that includes the times when personally, you know, my head is in the clouds and I'm not focused and I don't really have the motivation to keep going, to the times when professionally, you know, it's sort of like, I can't be bothered to learn another stat about how many species we've lost this year or how many acres of forest we've lost. And yet I keep going and I keep working at this because I'm committed. And that is, commitment has spanned a lifetime. Motivation and hope are going to kind of come and go, come and go, come and go. And commitment is what's going to be consistent.
Do you have suggestions for leaders of similar programs elsewhere around the world who are trying to convert previously damaged land into its natural state and organize environmental education programs?
I think I would pick up on what I was saying before about the need to be determined and not let so-called setbacks or failures discourage you, and to not let a lack of experience discourage you either. I think it's really important to connect with as many experts as you can and involve as many collaborators so you can bring together complementary skills and knowledge. Because, for example, when I first moved here, I knew nothing about forest restoration other than what I had read in academic articles. And as an environmental educator, we spout a lot of, you know, beautiful words about how important it is to plant trees and that's a really key hands-on environmental action. But what did I actually know about doing that in practicality? So I think one word of advice to other educators around the world, or other people, like you said, interested in getting involved in this area is, well, don't just dive in without any help and support and guidance from people who do have the experience, and don't give up when something goes wrong or things don't materialize in the exact way that you were expecting.
Perhaps in 1,000 years from now, what would you like future archaeologists find on this property?
Forest. Forest and even more species of birds and other animals. I guess I would also love for them to find people out enjoying nature, but I don't know if they're archaeologists, and so they're looking for remnants and traces.
Maybe a pair of binoculars.
Yeah. I was going to say that, but then I thought, well, no, that's not a good thing because we don't want binoculars disintegrating in the forest.
I'd like to know what kind of books you read or what kind of books influenced you. Any titles, environmental, non-environmental, any recommendations?
So the current books I have open in my Kindle at different pages include actually a book called Wild by Design, The Rise of Ecological Restoration by one of our former colleagues in DNR, Laura Martin. And it's all about how the field of ecological restoration has evolved over time, mainly in the US context, but it's given me some interesting reflections on what ecological restoration means to different people. I mentioned yesterday Marianne's book, her book Advancing Environmental Education Practice. I've read the book, but I often just open it at random pages now just to see, if there's some different way I can assimilate the information and some different practice I can bring to Finca Cántaros. So those are two of my environmental books, I would say. And I'm also reading a book about Costa Rica called Eco Laboratory, which looks at Costa Rica's strengths and weaknesses as the green republic I was describing yesterday. So Costa Rica has this world famous reputation as a green republic. It's very ahead of the curve in terms of sustainability initiatives, but it also has these darker sides. Agribusiness like pineapple that uses a lot of pesticides, the surf tourism and how surf tourism is impacting the environment. And so that book is helping me reflect on how Cántaros can make a difference in this context from an environmental perspective, taking into account the environmental issues and needs in this country.
What will be your legacy?
Well, I would like my legacy to be more people in this community inspired to care about everything in nature, from the plants to the birds to the frogs to the mammals, everything. And I would also like there to be more forest here in the community that is the result of our collaborative restoration efforts with the community, with the Amistosa Biological Corridor collaborators. And I would like that forest to be not just forest for all the ecological benefits, but forest that the people here really feel is like their backyard, is their forest, and they really feel that they can come anytime to go birding or to enjoy the tranquility and psychological benefits of nature. And so there would be, like I said, both those ecological benefits as a legacy, but almost more importantly to me, the social and psychological benefits of leaving forest behind. So we're about to get in the car to head down to Bosque Mágico. And here we have Randall Jimenez, who is the Community Outreach Coordinator for Finca Cántaros. His lovely wife, Yadira, who's a teacher at one of the local schools and has helped teach the bird sleuth curriculum. And Pablo, who's a member of the Monitoring Brigade of San Vito. And everyone is coming together today to help with restoration activities, not just tree planting, but tree growing. Alex is driving us down to Bosque Mágico, which is the name of one of Finca Cántaros' properties. Bosque Mágico means magic forest, and it's where we started a new restoration project this year in collaboration with the community and also in collaboration with scientists at ETH Zurich. And we're picking up some more volunteers along the way. Buenos días. ¿Listos para colaborar en la restauración del bosque? Qué bueno. Gracias a todos por venir. Ok, bueno, entonces, bienvenidas y bienvenidos a todos y a todas y muchas gracias por venir hoy para colaborar en esta actividad que no es solo de sembrar árboles, pero de hacer crecer árboles. All the species planted in this forest were acquired from the Osa Conservation Tree Nursery based at Finca Cántaros. They are all native species of trees that are typically fast growing. The faster the trees grow, the faster they can provide shade that kills off the grasses. And some of them are even endemic species. And you can see there's different sections because we have planted some of the areas in collaboration with a variety of members of the community. And today, members of the community are here helping us do composting and maintenance because, as I mentioned yesterday, it's not just about tree planting, but it's about tree growing and accompanying the growth of the trees and ensuring that those trees, that we're helping to ensure their survival over time. This soil is very humid. We're planting in a very moist area. So you'll see there's a lot of mud, but nothing feels quite as good as sticking a tree in the ground and thinking about the forest that this tree is going to help create.